to read Srimad Bhagavatam.
Sorry, Mataji, to interrupt. Everybody can mute their microphones, except, of course, for Rasika Mataji.
Okay. So today we are reading the 13th chapter of 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, which is titled The Appearance of Lord Varaha. Govichan, you can move to the next slide. So earlier we read in chapter 12, Maitreya was explaining how all the descendants came from Brahma. So he was saying that how the two bodies, Swayambhuva and Shatarupa, came from Brahma and they were going to create the further progeny. So in this chapter, Vidura will ask further questions about like what did Swayambhuva Manu do. That's how this chapter is going to start. So there are like this chapter has been divided in like 4 sections by Gurijana Prabhu. The first 1 to 17 text talks about Swayambhuva Manu's desire to serve, and then from 18 to 33 it talks about the birth and the deeds of Lord Varahadev. Then 34 to 45, the sages in the higher planets, they glorify the Lord in his boar incarnation. And finally 46 to 50, Varahadev will return to his own abode, and Maitreya Muni offers benedictions to all the hearers and the readers of this chapter. So let's go to verse first now. So here it starts with Shukadev Goswami. He's saying that after inquiring from Maitreya, Vidura wanted to inquire further on the topics. This is because Vidura wanted to know more about Manu, because Manu was a great devotee of the Lord, and it said that Vidura wanted to hear like more and more and more, because he was never satiated by hearing about the transcendental topics. He had a natural inclination for hearing about the Lord and his devotees. So this time he wanted to know about what did Swayambhuva Manu do, after he got his wife. He wanted to know about that. So in verse 3, Vidura says that Manu was a great devotee of the Lord, so it is worth hearing of his character and activities. So Srila Prabhupada explains nicely that actually there is no difference between the Lord and his pure devotees. So hearing of the topic of the Lord and the devotees have the same result. And I was reading Gurujan Prabhu. What he says is, like when we hear about some devotees, we actually get the same devotional taste those advanced devotees also have, and we understand how they became fixed in devotional service. So that gives us inspiration as well. So that's why Vidura wanted to hear more about Manu. And in verse 4 again, Vidura is saying that we must hear from the mouths of the pure devotees about the character and activities of pure devotees. And he says why? It's because the pure devotees always think within their hearts of the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead. Srila Prabhupada actually gives a wonderful purport. So I'm just going to read this purport. This is purport of verse 4. This is also had given in my slide. Transcendental students are those who undergo great penance in being trained by hearing the Vedas from a bona fide spiritual master. Not only must they hear about the activities of the Lord, but they must also hear about the transcendental qualities of the devotees who are constantly thinking of the lotus feet of the Lord within their hearts. A pure devotee of the Lord cannot be separated from the lotus feet of the Lord for even a moment. Undoubtedly, the Lord is always within the hearts of all living creatures, but they hardly know about it because they are deluded by the illusory material energy. The devotees, however, realize the presence of the Lord, and therefore they can always see the lotus feet of the Lord within their hearts. Such pure devotees of the Lord are as glorious as the Lord. They are in fact recommended by the Lord as more worshipable than he himself. Worship of the devotee is more potent than worship of the Lord. It is therefore the duty of the transcendental students to hear of pure devotees, as explained by similar devotees of the Lord. because one cannot explain about the Lord or his devotee unless one happens to be a pure devotee himself. So we can see here like how Prabhupada stresses the importance of hearing about the pure devotees of the Lord. So it's not that we should only hear about the Lord, but we should also hear about the pure devotees of the Lord. And we also hear from Srimad Bhagavatam 9:468, where we can see the definition of a pure devotee. It says that the pure devotee is always within the core of my heart, and the Lord says, I'm always in the heart of the pure devotee. My pure devotees do not know anything else but me, and I do not know anyone else but them. So it makes it more imperative that we should hear more about the characters and the activities of the pure devotees. We also heard in Srimad Bhagavatam 2nd canto 16th verse, Shushya Shabda Danasya Syanmahat Sevaya Vipra. There, like, how do we get the affinity? There it says, like, by serving those devotees who are completely freed from all vice, great service is done. By such service, one gains affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. So by serving pure devotees, we get their qualities. So in that way, by serving and from hearing from them, we gain the affinity for hearing about the Lord. So this is what Vidura says in text 4, and then Shukadev Goswami continues saying that the personality of Godhead Krishna was pleased to place his lotus feet on the lap of Vidura, because Vidura was very meek and gentle. So Prabhupada explains that when the Lord used to go and dine in Vidura's place, he used to rest, and at that time the Lord used to place his lotus feet on the lap of Vidura. Now, he was so pleased with Vidura, so he used to give that service. So when Maitreya Muni thought about this, Vidura's fortune, because it's indeed it's a great fortune for Vidura that the Lord placed his lotus feet on his lap. Maitreya Muni got, he became so pleased, and then that's how he was so pleased to narrate about the topics of the Lord when Vidura asked about it with so much joy. So now Maitreya Muni continues, he begins to answer Vidura's question about what Swayambhuva Manu did. So from verse 6, he starts talking about that. So now Manu is going to talk to his father Brahma. He says in verse 7 that he's asking his father that please order us how we may be able to do service unto you. Now Manu is asking his father. Srila Prabhupada nicely says, a father's duty is to bring up the son until he's grown. And when the son has grown up, it is his duty to render service unto the father. It's not like the father always is like a supplier for the son's needs. So it becomes the son's responsibility to serve his father when he's grown up. And further, Manu asks Brahma to for direction for execution of his duty. So from verse 9, Lord Brahma will start speaking, and he will tell Manu what to do. So first, Brahma actually says that he is very pleased with the way Manu asked his questions, because he says that you have without reservation surrendered yourself unto me with your heart for my instructions. Like, he is appreciating the way Manu is submissive and asking questions from Brahma. In verse 10, Manu says that your example is quite befitting a son in relationship with his father. This sort of adoration for the superior is required. One who is beyond the limit of envy and who is sane accepts the order of his father with great and executes it to his full capacity. So in this verse 9 and 10, Srila Prabhupada actually explains the relationship between the father and his son. He says that the father is always, naturally disposed with goodwill towards his son, and is always ready to son in his progress in his life. But sometimes the son doesn't necessarily takes the father's instructions, because he has his own independence, right? So he misuses it. So he goes in a different direction. As we know, every one of us has the choice how to use our minute independence. But if the son takes the father's guidance unreservedly, like how here Manu is doing, then the father becomes so eager, Prabhupada says 10 times more eager to instruct him. So this father-son relationship here exhibited by Manu and Brahma is an excellent example because both of them are well qualified, and Manu is like he's the father of mankind, right? So he's fully trained in Vedic knowledge, and he's ready. I mean, Brahma is the father of Vedic knowledge, and he's fully trained, and he's going to, instruct his son Manu on what he should do. So Prabhupada says that we should follow this example perfectly. And in this context, Prabhupada also explains about obeying the father. So we read earlier that Brahma asked his Kumaras to actually increase the progeny, but those four Kumaras said they were not interested because they wanted to engage in the service of the Lord. So Prabhupada says that if the sons disobey the father for a higher purpose, they don't get the reaction from disobedience. Whereas if you disobey the father on the material grounds, then the sons will be surely subjected to disciplinary reaction. So this is something that we should be very careful. And then in verse 11, Brahma actually instructs. Govincharan, are you in slide 6 now? I could have put the verse numbers here, I didn't put. So in verse 11, actually, in verse 11, Brahma gives some instructions to Manu. He gives 4 instructions. He says that you should beget qualified children like yourself, and you should rule the world in the pursuance of principles of devotional service, and you should worship the Lord by performances of yajna, and you should give proper protection to the living beings. Because Manu asked, right, how he can serve his father. So his father Brahma gave these instructions to Manu. So if you see in the next verse, in this verse actually in verse 11, Srila Prabhupada actually explains about Varnashrama system. He says about there are 2 ways for spiritual advancement. One is Varnashrama system where we follow the systematic process that the Lord has given for advancing in spiritual life by following the rules and regulations. And that's the one that Brahma is saying that you should beget nice children and as a sacrifice for the Lord, and engage them in the devotional service of the Lord. So there is one way of serving the Lord, and this is what the Manus would be doing. And there is another way which is directly engaging in devotional service, and that is what the Kumaras did. So if you are engaged in this one, Prabhupada says that you don't have a need to execute the systematic principles of Varna and Ashrama. Like you don't have to go through like Brahmachari, Grahastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyasi. Like the Kumaras and all, they were in like Naishtiki Brahmachari. They directly engage in devotional service of the Lord. You don't have to go through the systematic path. And in the next verse, in verse 12, Srila Prabhupada here further clarifies about who is a perfect administrator, because Brahma says that in one of his instructions to Manu, that he says that he should give proper protection to the living beings in the world, and when the Lord sees him to be a proper protector, he will be very pleased with him. So Prabhupada takes this opportunity to explain how an administration should be. Like Brahma is a representative of the Lord, and Manu is a representative of Brahma. So all the leaders in the world should act as a representative of Brahma, of Manu. And there is this book called Manu Samhita, which is like a law book for the entire human society, which directs everyone like how to live in the world as a service to the Lord. So Prabhupada says that all of us should follow that book, and it must be the duty of the leader to make sure that all the citizens are trained in the worship of the Supreme Lord. It's not that the leader is just to to collect taxes and to make money of their own, but the leader's main purpose is to train the conditioned souls in serving the senses of the Lord and not just to serve their own senses through sense gratification. And Prabhupada says that this is the purpose of administrative system, and one who knows the secret, he is the perfect administrator. And who does not know this is just a show bottle administrator, which is what we see today. Like I was seeing some news about the election that's happening in India, and it's just about what they want to get and what they want to achieve, and just during the election time, and they just even material promises they don't fulfill, leave alone spiritual promises. It just shows that the present leaders are only interested in their own welfare and things like that. And Prabhupada also says that if the leader doesn't train the citizens in the devotional service of the Lord, he will actually be punished by the Lord, because he is not performing his duties sincerely. And in the next verse, in verse 13, Brahma says that who should be satisfied. He clarifies here that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Janardana, is the form to accept all the results of sacrifice. If he is not satisfied, then one's labor for advancement is futile. He is the ultimate self, and therefore one who does not satisfy him certainly neglects his own interest. So, Prabhupada says that the entire show of material manifestation is for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord created this material manifestation because we all wanted to enjoy independent of the Lord, but then the goal is we become frustrated and finally understand that who is to be served and then serve him, and thereby we get out of this world. So what he's saying is the goal should be to serve the Lord. If that is not happening, then whatever we do is useless in this world. So many people, or all of us, want to satisfy our senses, but we don't get complete enjoyment. Then above the senses is the mind, and above the mind is the actual self, and above the self is the super self, and above the super self is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. So we need to know who to satisfy, so that at the end we also become satisfied, because ultimately we also, the soul wants to be blissful, and the only way to be blissful is to engage the senses in the master of the senses, who is Rishikesha, the Lord. Guruji Prabhu was saying that if you try to polish the cage and not feed the bird, you won't be the bird won't be satisfied. That is like an example of how we are trying to satisfy our body and our intelligence and our mind instead of satisfying the Supreme Lord. So Prabhupada says in the last line, which is a very nice line in this purport: the complete process of perfectional service is to render service for the satisfaction of the transcendental senses of Lord Krishna, who is known as Janardana. So now, after Brahma giving the instructions, now the Manu is going to ask his father, because what Manu sees is the earth is actually gone under deep in the Garbhodaka ocean. It has got submerged. So he is asking his father in verse 14 and 15 and 16 is if you are asking me to create living entities, where will the living entities live? Because earth is the suitable place for the living entities, but I don't see the earth. Earth has gotten submerged in the great water. So he's asking Brahma that we should lift the earth, then only he can perform his service, otherwise he cannot perform his service. So now Brahma is thinking how the earth can be lifted. So here this verse 17 shows Brahma's humility. Like, even though Brahma was empowered by the Lord in becoming the secondary creator, and he's father of everyone in the universe, but Brahma didn't think oh, I can lift the earth. He knew his position just before, Manu had glorified Brahma and all that, but still Brahma knows what is his position, what is the Lord's position. So he said that it is best to let the Almighty Lord direct us. So in this purport, Srila Prabhupada very nicely explains, the devotees of the Lord, who are all confidential servitors, are sometimes perplexed in the discharge of their respective duties, but they are never discouraged. They have full faith in the Lord, and He paves the way for the smooth progress of the devotee's duty. So Brahma became anxious, but then he knows that the Lord can, help him. So he has full faith in the Lord, and that's why he is, he is saying that we will let the Lord direct us. There is no Brahma knows that there is no point in becoming proud or being proud of his own identity. It's best to let the Lord direct us when we are perplexed in our execution of our duty. So next, from verse 18, here Maitreya Muni will begin to explain how the Lord took the form of a transcendental boar, and he will start explaining how the boar looked, what the Lord in the form of boar did, like the transcendental form and the deeds of the incarnation. So first we see in verse 18 that when Brahma was thinking, a small form of a boar came out of his nostril. Initially, the size was not more than the upper portion of a thumb, but then the boar became situated in the sky, and he became so gigantic as a great elephant. The size like grew so much, and the boar, and then on seeing this, Brahma start with along with his all his sons, he started to think, you know who is this? It is such a wonderful incarnation. Is it the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu? He was like, because nobody has seen such a wonderful incarnation, he began to think, is it the Lord Vishnu? At that time, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu, he roared like a great mountain. So when he roared, it confirmed to Brahma and all the sages that this is nothing, is no one but the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Prabhupada says that even though this roar was like so huge, such a wonderful and gigantic incarnation, it didn't actually create any fear in the hearts of the Lord's devotees, like the sages in the higher planets and Brahma, whereas it was like an open threat to all the demons, who always challenge the Lord's powers. So at this time, when the Lord rode, the sages who are the residents of Janaloka, Tapaloka, and Satyaloka, all the higher planets, they started chanting Vedic mantras to glorify the Lord, because we know that the purpose of the Vedas is to know the Lord, and He is the object of the Vedic prayers. Next, in verse 20, Prabhupada explains in verse 25's purport that he further explains that um, the goal of the Vedic prayers is to glorify the Lord, which is what the sages of the higher planets did. And the Lord understood that the prayers were meant for him. So in return, he again roared in reply. Like his form of acknowledgement is again a roar, which again enlivened his devotees. So in this purport, Prabhupada very nicely explains how the transcendental form of the Lord is the personified Vedas. He says that the Vedas are said to be the breath of the Lord, and that breath was inhaled by Brahma, the original student of the Vedas. The breathing from the nostril of the Brahma caused the appearance of Lord Boar, and therefore the boar incarnation of the Lord is the personified Vedas. So he is like he's explaining that how the transcendental form of the Lord is actually the Vedas personified. So whenever there is glorification of the Lord, it is to be understood that the Vedic mantras are being chanted. So we know that Vedas are used to glorify the Lord. So whenever somebody glorifies the Lord, it is as equivalent to chanting the Vedic mantras. And then in the next verse, now from verse 27, Maitreya Muni explains about the wonderful activities of the Lord. Like Lord does all these activities to uh, please, his devotees, to give them transcendental happiness. So in verse 27, it says that before actually performing his actual pastime of lifting the earth, the Lord like did some transcendental activities, like he flew in the sky, he slashed his tail, he scattered the clouds in the sky with his hooves and his glittering white tusks. Prabhupada says that the Lord, looked like a big mountain. He was referred here as Mahidraha, which means either a big mountain or a sustainer of the earth. Like God's body was looking as big and hard as the Himalayan mountains. And Prabhupada clarifies here that we should not think that uh, like the Lord took the body of a hog as if and think it's like a material form. We know that the body of the hog is not something very great, and people despise that form. But the hog form of the Lord, that is not materially contaminated. Otherwise, such a hog in the earth cannot fly in the sky and cannot perform such activities. So undoubtedly, we cannot compare it to the material form of the Lord. It is definitely a transcendental form of the Lord. And the Lord has taken this form just as a pastime, because the Lord Lord can take any form. He can assume any form to perform his duties. Here, one of the things that he's going to perform is to lift the earth. So who goes to the what you call the depths and takes things? Like the hog is the one which goes deep inside the ditches and picks things. So as to convey that, the Lord took the wonderful form of boar to go deep inside the Garbhodaka ocean to lift the earth. This again proves that Gurujan Prabhu says that this actually asserts that the Lord's transcendental nature, like whatever he does, whatever form he takes, it is still transcendental. I read in Gurujan Prabhu's class, this shows that, by this, Srimad Bhagavatam is actually purifying us and giving us transcendental knowledge so that we become ready to understand the Lord's transcendental pastimes in 10th canto. So that when we read the 10th canto, we definitely understand that the Lord's transcendental pastimes with his gopis are actually transcendental, and they cannot be compared with a material lust, or some people call it immoral and all that. We will understand by hearing all these pastimes and these various incarnations. When we come to 10th canto, we will have faith in the transcendental position of the Lord, and we'll never compare ourselves to be equal to the Lord, or we will judge the activities of the Lord. So all these explanations are actually preparing us and purifying us, because originally, or even now, we are all envious of the Lord, we're envious of the person of the Lord, and that's how we came here. So all these things, all these narrations in the 9 cantos are to purify our consciousness. Next, now again further in verse 29, and it continues until verse 33. It says how the Lord rescued the earth. So what Maitreya Muni says, that the Lord divided in the middle of the ocean, and then he penetrated the water with his hooves, and there he saw the earth, and he personally lifted the earth, and he took the earth on his tusks, and he got the earth out of the water. From this we can understand how such a magnificent activity the Lord performed. Like earth is like so huge, and the Lord just lifted the earth in his tusk and he brought it. And at that time, he killed the demon Hiranyaksha, who tried to fight with the Lord. Here in this chapter, Maitreya Muni is not explaining in detail. Later in verse, in chapter, I believe it's 15 or 16, there's an entire chapter dedicated to the fighting between the Lord and the demon. There, we will hear about it in detail. Here, he just says that the Lord had to fight with Hiranyaksha, and Lord killed him. And then the Lord actually placed the earth on the water and made the earth float in the water by investing his potency. Obviously, the Lord is the one who sustains all the planets in their orbits. It's not something great for the Lord to sustain the earth. Then from verse 34, the sages in the higher planets, they will start to glorify this transcendental form of the Lord. Here in many purports, Prabhupada calls the Lord Boar. It was so nice to read that he calls him as Lord Boar instead of Lord Varahadev. So all these sages have now witnessed this magnificent action of the Lord taking the form of boar and rescuing the earth and fighting with Varahadev. So now they will offer wonderful prayers from verse 34. So what they say is, they again say that the Lord is the form of the personified Vedas. He is the enjoyer of all sacrifices. He is the unconquerable Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Prabhupada clarifies that we should never misunderstand the form of the Lord because he took the form of the boar. That is how the sages understood. So that is how we also should understand. Then from verse 35, the sages will explain how the Lord is like the personified sacrifices. Because in the purpose of the Vedas, we know that is to please the Lord through sacrifices. So they'll say like all ingredients of the sacrifice, they come from the Lord. For example, they say that the Gayatri and the Vedic hymns are in the touch of the Lord's skin. In his bodily hairs is the kusha grass, in his eyes is the clarified butter, and his legs is the four kinds of fruitive activities. So they explain that the Lord's body is actually the different parts of the Vedas. So they further glorify the Lord to mean that he is the personified Vedas, he is the object of the Vedas. And in this context, Prabhupada takes the opportunity to stress that there are a group of people who don't actually believe in the incarnation of the Lord, and he calls them as miscreants because they are not able to see it. They don't agree the different forms of incarnations of the Lord. Prabhupada calls him as how he calls in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna calls in 7:15 as Muda. He says that they are the lowest of the mankind. And in verse 36, the sages further explain about the different plates of sacrifice. I didn't necessarily understand this fully, but what I have heard is like when we do Sharda and all, we offer a plate specifically, we call it like the plate of Vishnu, like, Vishnu will come and eat it. So we give that plate specifically to a particular Brahmana. So like that, when you do sacrifices, there are like different plates of sacrifice to satisfy, different demigods and different, here it says that the Lord's different parts of the body's Lord is different plates of sacrifice, like nostril, tongue, belly, poles of the Lord's ears, mouth, throat. They're all explained as the different parts of the different plates of the sacrifice. And Prabhupada actually explains in this purport that actually it's very hard to follow the rules and regulations, because he says that there are some group of people who just ignite a small fire and then they just offer something whimsically in the fire and they call it like performing a daily sacrifice. But that's not enough. There are actually different sacrifices that you should do on a daily basis if you are going to follow strictly the rules and regulation. I remember one of my relative, he performs Agnihotra sacrifice every day. Like he performs so many rituals, like it finishes only like in the afternoon or something, and then only he takes his meals for the day. Like he's like very strict because he's been following this right from his childhood. So there are like very few people who do that, but in majority others, it's like a like a ritualistic thing. They just do something. So Prabhupada says that it's very hard, and you cannot get all the results unless you follow all the rules and regulations, because it's karma kanda, right? So it has to be performed exactly according to the rules and regulations. So in this age of Kali, what is recommended is Sankirtan Yajna. So Prabhupada says that the incarnation of the Supreme Lord is Yajneshwara. So unless one has respect for the incarnation of the Lord, he cannot perfectly perform sacrifice. So taking shelter of the Lord and rendering service of the Lord is actually performing sacrifice to the Lord. So there is no difference in us, chanting and hearing about the glories of the Lord and rendering service of the Lord is exactly the same as performing the sacrifice. Even though performing sacrifice is glorified, Prabhupada clarifies that the devotional service that we perform, and that is the way that is subscribed in this age of Kali Yuga, because we cannot, with our current Manda, Sumanda Matayo, and with all the frailties of the Kali Yuga, we cannot perform such sacrifice, and it's better for us to perform Sankirtan Yajna, and which is what was recommended by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for this age. Then they continue to glorify the Lord, like how the Lord's head is the fire, and his living force is aggregate of all desires, and his semen is the sacrifice called Soma Yajna. His skin and touch are the 7 elements of Agnishtoma sacrifice, and the same principle is elaborated further and further. And then Prabhupada again clarifies in the purport to verse 38, anyone who is in contact with the Supreme Lord by discharging devotional service is understood to have performed all different varieties of yajnas. So we don't have to think that only by performing these so many different kinds of sacrifice like this Agnishtoma or Agnihotra and all that, that we can please the Lord. But by discharging devotional service, it's understood that we have done all those sacrifices. And then the sages say next, they say that how they in verse 39, the sages say that the Lord can be realized by the pure mind, free from all visible and invisible material contamination. So here, Prabhupada here talks about the Bhagavad Gita verse 10:10, Vedami Buddhi Yogam Tam. Like for a person who is sincerely serving the Lord within him, within the heart of the devotee, gives the transcendental knowledge by which the devotee can understand the Lord. So the sages is actually saying that the Lord can only be realized by the person who's engaged in the service of the Lord, and that's how the Lord, clears the contamination within the devotee's Lord and shows him the transcendental knowledge. And the sages continue to explain further. They say, and now they are glorifying like how the Lord, like a elephant coming out of the water with the lotus flower. The Lord similarly lifted the earth on his tusks. They are comparing that, like how it was so beautiful. And they also say that the Lord also looked even more beautiful when he emerged from the water. And Prabhupada says that, so nicely says, the Lord becomes more beautiful because of his pure devotees on the earth. So the Lord also became so beautiful. And in verse 42, they glorify the Lord as the Supreme Father and the earth as the Mother. And the Lord has invested his potency in the Mother Earth. Like we know that the material nature, though has given the bodies, it didn't do it by itself. The Lord actually impregnated the earth with the living entities, and that's how the Mother Nature. I mean, the nature is called the Mother. Though some people only see the nature as the independent being, whereas Prabhupada clarifies here further that the material nature cannot produce living creatures unless in contact with the Supreme Lord. And also another thing very nicely Prabhupada explains here about the law of gravitation. That is what he is explaining as his potency that he is invested on the earth. Like we know, without the law of gravitation, nothing can sustain everything that is happening in the world, in the material world, the planets and all these things. Without the gravitational force, we all cannot be living in this world. Though the scientists can discover the law, but who's the one who actually made it happen is the Supreme Lord. And then the sages say another very nice thing. They say that actually this is not a wonderful activity, because the Lord is capable of performing so many activities. In fact, he created this wonderful cosmic manifestation. So this is not a big deal for the Lord. He can do anything and everything. Prabhupada very nicely says that when a scientist discovers something, the common people think, oh wow, what a wonderful invention and a discovery, and then they gave Nobel Prize and all that stuff. But then an intelligent man, he then thinks, oh, who gave the brain to the scientist? There must be a creator, and he tries to find out the source of the brain of the scientist, which we know is the Supreme Lord. Prabhupada says such is an intelligent man, because a common man, he will be thinking about the wonderful action of the material nature, and he will give credit to just the nature. Whereas a Krishna conscious person, he knows who is behind this wonderful cosmic manifestation, and he will give credit to that person, which is Krishna. So a devotee is therefore not astonished to see the wonderful boar, because he knows that the Lord is able to act far more wonderful. Then another thing, very nicely, if they just say that when the Lord came out of the water in his form of the boar, he shook his body, and when he shook his body, there were water droplets in his hairs in his shoulder because he was immersed in the water, and those sprinkled and they landed in the bodies of the sages in the higher planets, the Janaloka, Tappaloka, and Satyaloka. They all felt so purified. This is such a nice glorification of the transcendental form of the Lord, because naturally the body of the hog is considered like impure, and nobody considers, like, if water spills from the body of the hog, nobody considers themselves purified, rather they consider themselves impure. Whereas here, since the both form of the Lord is completely transcendental, and these sages, even though they are already brahmanas and purified, they consider themselves so purified. This proves that the form of the Lord is very transcendental. Prabhupada says that the Ganges water is pure because of its emanating in the toe of the Lord, and there's no difference between the water emanating from the toe and that from the tips of the hair on the shoulder of the Lord both. They are both absolute and transcendental. And finally, the sages glorify the form of the Lord in verse 45, saying, actually, nobody can estimate the limit of the wonderful activities of the Lord. It's very bewildering. I mean, they say a very nice point that it is bewildering. Whatever the Lord does in spiritual world or in the material world, both are bewildering. So best is to just ask the Lord to bestow His mercy. Prabhupada clarifies in the purport to verse 45, very nicely he says that, he paraphrases the sage's prayers. Both worlds are bewildered by your different energies. Those who are in the spiritual world are absorbed in your loving service, forgetting themselves, and you also. And those in the material world are absorbed in material sense gratification and therefore also forget you. No one can know you because you are unlimited. It is best not to try to know you by unnecessary mental speculation. Rather, kindly bless us so that we can worship you with costless devotional service. So what they are saying is, like, we shouldn't try to speculate or know about the form of the Lord, because it's very hard to know about the form of the Lord or try to find a limit to the Lord's potencies. The best is to pray to the Lord to shower His mercy upon us. And then, so that finishes the sage's glorification of the Lord. So now from the last 5 verses, Maitreya Muni will explain what the Lord did. So the Lord, after being glorified by all the sages, He placed the earth. Oh yeah, I said this earlier. He placed the earth on the water and made it float. And then the Lord went back to His own abode. And now Maitreya Muni will offer benedictions to the hearers of this wonderful pastime. We hear, right, it's called Falastiti. Like after narrating some prayers, the last verse will say, like, what is the benediction you will get when you hear. So like that, the next 3 verses, Maitreya Muni says, verse 48, he says, if one hears and describes in a devotional service attitude this auspicious narration of Lord Bore, which is worthy of description, the Lord, who is within the heart of everyone, is very pleased. So he's telling us, who are all hearing, and when we describe about this wonderful pastime to others in the proper service attitude, the Lord, who is seated in our heart as a Paramatma, will be very pleased. And Prabhupada says that this is the way by which to destroy the pangs of material existence. If we want to get rid of the material miseries, the solution is to hear and explain about the transcendental activities of the Lord. Then in verse 49, this is a very nice verse and a purport. In the translation I'll read, nothing remains unachieved when the Supreme Personality of Godhead is pleased with someone. By transcendental achievement, one understands everything else to be insignificant. One who engages in transcendental loving service is elevated to the highest perfectional stage by the Lord Himself, who is seated in everyone's heart. So basically he says that devotional service is the only thing that we need to aspire for, and if we have achieved it, everything else is insignificant. Nothing is needed, and just by performing devotional service we can be elevated to the highest stage. So I'll read the purport. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 10:10, the Lord gives intelligence to the pure devotees so that they may be elevated to the highest perfectional stage. It is confirmed herein that a pure devotee who constantly engages in the loving service of the Lord is awarded all knowledge necessary to reach the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For such a devotee, there is nothing valuable to be achieved but the Lord's service. If one serves faithfully, there is no possibility of frustration because the Lord Himself takes charge of the devotee's advancement. The Lord is seated in everyone's heart and He knows the devotee's motive and arranges everything achievable. In other words, the pseudo devotee who is anxious to achieve material gains cannot attain the highest perfectional stage because the Lord is in knowledge of his motive. One merely has to become sincere in his purpose, and then the Lord is there to help in every way. So this is such a wonderful purport where Srila Prabhupada explains that the Lord knows both the motive of a sincere person and the motive of an insincere person. So we cannot fool anyone because the Lord is in our heart and He exactly knows what is our motive and what is our consciousness. So very nice point. Another point he says that we don't have to become frustrated. We just have to serve faithfully. The Lord will take care of helping us in every step of our service. The only qualification is we have to be sincere. Of course, that is the hard part because of our conditioned nature, but that is what we have to aspire for, that we have to be very sincere in our purpose. The last verse, Maitreya Muni says that he says, if we don't, if we are not interested in hearing about the narrations of the Lord's activities, which are like nectar, then we cannot be called as human beings. He says that this is the one that can deliver us from this miserable material world. So if you are not interested in this, then he says then the person cannot be a human being. So that ends this chapter. Thank you everyone for giving me an opportunity to narrate this wonderful pastime of the Lord. So maybe now we can take questions. Prabhu said he has to leave by 8:30. So Prabhu, so can we start asking everyone to say their comments or questions?
Please.
So from my side, I'll go from left to right. Govind Charan, do you have any comments or questions?
Very good. Thank you, Rasika, for the wonderful class. It was each word was so emphatic. When you say deep, it was really deep. When you say exactly, it was so exact. So, one question. You said at the end, the Lord placed the water, made it float on the water. I thought He put it back in the orbit, the Earth.
Yeah, I also had that question. I didn't read the further chapters. I thought the Lord did that and left, and later somebody would place it. I actually didn't know. Shivas Prabhu, can you clarify?
Sorry, Mataji, can you repeat what Prabhuji said?
The question is, the Lord Varahadev, after rescuing the earth from the ocean, he placed it on the water to float on the water. Govind Charan is asking, shouldn't the earth be placed in its orbit? I said either, the 3/4 of the universe was filled with water, right? I don't want to speculate. I was thinking either the Lord did that and left because his purpose was to lift the earth from the deep inside the Garbhodaka ocean because it is submerged, and there would be someone to put it in its orbit, or that itself is the orbit. I didn't know the answer for that too.
Go ahead, Mataji. I'll find the answer for you. We can keep asking.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay,
Any other question, Govind Charan?
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Shri Gopal Prabhu, you have any comments or questions?
Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you for the excellent presentation. One question I have, you just read the purport of 45. So there it says, those who are in the spiritual world are observed in your loving service, forgetting themselves and you also. So I'm just trying to understand, if they are in the spiritual world, how can they forget the Lord?
What I understood is they forget that he is a supreme personality of Godhead, like how the cowherd boys, they think Krishna as their friend. Yashoda thinks Krishna as her son. They don't necessarily know the limit of the Lord's potencies or his wonderful characteristics. He is like their, for the pastime, he is like one among them. They don't know his wonderful activities. That's how I understood, because in the context it said that the materialists don't understand the wonderful activities of the Lord, right? So,
Okay. Thank you, Mataji. And the other question I had was the verse 37.
37.
Here, so here it says, "O Lord, the repetition of your appearance is the desire of all kinds of initiation. Your neck is the place for three desires, and your tusks are the result of initiation and the end of all desires." I'm just trying to understand what is this initiation means here, desire of all kinds of initiation.
Actually, I didn't understand this verse particularly, and I tried to find in Gurujan Prabhu's book or his class. I didn't find anything. I just assumed that they are further glorifying that the Lord is the object of the Vedic sacrifices. I didn't get what is specifically the end of all desires and what is initiation meant by. Maybe Srivas Prabhu can clarify that.
Actually, in the Sanskrit, word to word, the three desires are given, right?
Yeah. The three desires are given, but the initiation, the translation, the word says is Diksha. That's what the word to word meaning in the word says is Diksha. But when he says your appearance is a desire for all kinds of initiation, I don't know what it means.
Okay, so I think we can wait for Srivas Prabhu.
Yeah. Prabhu, if you can explain that, because we didn't have any purport.
Okay, yeah. Yes, I noted, Mataji.
Okay.
Continue.
Okay, sure.
So I
Anything
think
else, Gopal Prabhu?
I think that should be it from me, Mataji. Thank you so much again.
Thank you, Prabhu. Shri Govindatta Prabhu, you have any comments or questions?
Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you for very nice presentation.
Thank you.
Especially I like initially you mentioned about hearing Srimad Bhagavatam from pure devotees. I had the same question like which Govind asked, it tells like how the earth is touched and it was placed on the water. So I thought it's like the orbit, but like so if you can clarify that. And in the beginning, when Brahma, like when Manu saw that Earth is submerged in the water, so it seems like other planets were still there, like because we see Satyaloka and other Mahatloka and others actually glorified Lord Vara. So, did Manu could have created the human? Like the civilization on other planets as well. Like I'm just wondering.
I mean, I had this same question as to why Manu asked like the earth as the dwelling place of all living entities. I thought like earth is kind of the default place for the living entities. People who are higher in nature, they live in the higher planets. People who are like lower, like the demons, they live in the lower planets. So earth is kind of like the normal living place. So since that was not there, Manu asked for the earth to be lifted up.
I see, Matthew. Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's it, Matthew, from my side.
Thank you, Prabhu. So, Keshwari Mataji, you have comments or questions?
Yes, Mataji. Mataji, I had a couple questions. Very, very nice class, Mataji. Very, I was just thinking the way you put it in the PowerPoint makes it easy for us to understand the main gist, rather than going for shloka. This is actually nice, I felt. Mataji, I was thinking about, you said self and super self, and then Supreme Personality of Godhead. What is the super self there, Mataji?
I thought the super self was the Paramatma.
Yeah, that's what we thought too. I just wanted to...
Yeah, that is what I thought. Prabhu, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so super self is Paramatma, and then Krishna.
And then the Bhagavan.
Bhagavan. And The same question as Shri Gopal Prabhu had, Mataji. I'm actually trying to go to the thing. The 36 and 37 seems to be a little. I mean, I didn't understand 36 and 37, Mataji, like the plate of sacrifice and the chewing of
Right.
Agni, or our tongue is a prayer activities of initiation. So even actually 38, I mean, I'm thinking there's probably more inner meaning to all those verses, and it's not so much of purport as there, so it's kind of hard to understand it.
Yeah, when we were discussing this, reading with Govind Charan, he was saying that if we were like Vedic Pandits or someone who knows all these sacrifices, we probably would have understood it. But since we don't know, obviously we are not able to understand. But the main gist to us, they are trying to glorify the Lord as the object of sacrifices, object of the Vedic prayers, and they are attributing so many aspects of the sacrifice to the form of the Lord. Yeah, the individual things I also didn't understand specifically.
And I also told one more thing.
What? That Sukeshwari will ask this question?
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he told that. When we were discussing, he said that.
Prabhu is trying to predict future now. I'm going to ask another question, Prabhu. Can you predict what it is? just kidding, Prabhu. I also had another question about the Manu. Is it true that the four incarnation happens in different Manus? Because in one of the purports they mention about Swayambhu Manu and Chakshusha Manu. Is that means? Does it mean? I mean, it sounded that the four incarnation happens in each of the Manus thing.
I asked Srivas Prabhu in the beginning, before the class started, the same question, and he read from Laghu Bhagavatamrita, and there it said that it does happen in. It's not like it will happen in every Manu's lifetime, but there also it's given it does happen. He appears in Chakshusha Millennium and in Visveta Varaha. That's what he confirmed, but it's not like at every millennium it will happen.
Okay, I was just going to look for another question, Mataji. I thought I had one more, but I can't find it. That's okay, Mataji. And thank you so much, Mataji. I think it's so amazing to read Bhagavatam in the morning, I feel. And,
thank you, Mataji. Thank you.
Thank you.
Haribol Sundar, you have any comments?
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Thank you for the nice class. I just I had the same question as what Govind Prabhu mentioned. That what does it mean that the Lord picked up the earth and then he made it afloat on water rather than orbit? So that's I guess it will be clarified later.
Yeah.
Thank you for the. Yeah, I like the format also. You didn't have the verses, but you had a summary.
Because there are so many verses, I thought it will become 50 slides if I put each verse. So I didn't have a choice, so I did like this. Thank you, Sundar. Vedavit Prabhu, are you in the other call or?
No, that is finished, Mataji.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So actually, I was checking the purport. Thank you very much, Mataji. It's a very nice class. Just I was not able to hear for just 5 or 10 minutes only, but otherwise it was very nice class. You presented, how the introduction before, of Lord Varaha, and even actually the incarnation of Lord Varaha, how it is very wonderful. I just now I checked the answer to like Govind Charan Prabhu's and Sundar Prabhu's question. Like Prabhupada, in one of the purport, it is mentioned that Lord does whatever Lord does. It's like inconceivable potency. He placed earth on the water. So for a human being to understand an inconceivable potency is it's out of our like capacity. Something just now I read, and I'm trying to find out which purport it is.
Yeah, there he says like we might think how an earth can be kept afloat in the water.
Yeah.
In that context, Prabhupada was saying that we cannot even think how that is possible because the Lord can do.
Yes. And there is another one. Yeah, actually, when Shukeshwar Mataji and myself we were reading this chapter, we actually thought, how like generally we don't consider non-movable living beings as like living beings. Even the mountains and the like the ocean, I don't know, like because they also have life and they can speak or they can interact, something like that. We thought about that. And there was another, the last purport was like very enlightening, because how we are not humans if we don't think about our purpose of life. So that is one good point for preaching. I know it's very heavy for people to say like that, but that is the truth.
Yeah, that's true. Anything else, Prabhu?
That's all, Mataji. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Vishaka, you have any comments or questions?
Thank you, Jessica. It was a very nice presentation. I was thinking it's, at least for me, it's such a welcome change now that the topic, all the technical subject has ended. We are actually, reading about the pastimes of the Lord, which is very, very sweet. I don't have any particular question. And I'm thinking why I don't have any questions. But it was nice to hear, the questions of other devotees and your answers. For me, I just had, this comment that, when the conversation between Brahma and the Manu, and when Manu actually asks Brahma to help, to retrieve earth from the ocean, then Brahma, I'm just trying to find the verse, one second. Yeah, the verse 17. I really liked that verse because even though Brahma was empowered, to create, still there were many things that, Brahma didn't know. And it was very, honest on his part, like, so much of humility. He says, while I have been engaged in the process of creation, the earth has been inundated by a deluge and has gone down into the depths of the ocean. What can we do who are engaged in this matter of creation? It is best to let the Almighty Lord direct us. And, I was thinking it to be a very nice verse. And that, and Lord Brahma is directing the conditioned souls to also think like that, because if we do a project or a service, we think we know everything about it, right? So, but then, here Lord Brahma is giving us a direction that even like whatever we are doing, it's actually the empowerment of a spiritual master and the Supreme Lord. And it's not that we know everything about it, but rather it's always in our heart. It's best to, give all the credits to the Lord and actually always depend on the Lord. So I really like this particular verse, and also I really like the Varnashram, aspect of, the relationship between the father and son. It was very, very, deep and nice. So that's all I have to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Vishaka. That's a wonderful point about not being proud of our achievements. Actually, that reminds me, I had put another slide of the take-home points, but I didn't add this one. Govinchan, can you move to the next slide? I'll just finish with that. So I just wrote whatever we can, take home from this chapter. Like, we need to respect and hear about pure devotees from other devotees. Do not disobey your parents on material grounds. If you become a leader, we need to take responsibility for our dependents for their spiritual life, because material life we will normally take. All hard work, if not aimed at pleasing the Lord, is completely useless. Whatever form the Lord takes, it's always transcendental, even if we cannot understand it. The next page. Performing devotional service to the Lord, Sankirtan Yajna, is equivalent to performing sacrifices. All we have to do is to be sincere and the Lord is there to help all the way. If we don't have interest in hearing about the transcendental activities of the Lord, then we are not considered as human beings. That's all I had. I just listed the take-home points so that to remember from this chapter. That's all, Srivas Prabhu.
Thank you for the very, very lucid and very concise presentation, Rasika Machi, and the PowerPoint presentation and the systematic way you spoke was very nice. Thank you very much. So the answer to the question, whether when the Lord placed the planet on the ocean, I still don't have an answer to it. The only thing I could find was that the demon had plucked the Earth from its orbit and placed it into the bottom of the ocean. A couple of other things in that purport that came about is either the ocean was placed in the Rasatala region. It's a contradiction to say that the ocean was placed, the Earth was placed in the Rasatala region as well as in the ocean, because it can't be both, which means that the ocean was placed under, the Earth was placed under the ocean, but in the direction of Rasatala region. So that's the understanding there. Then I don't have an exact answer, at least from Srila Prabhupada's book, wherein it is said how the planet was either placed on the surface of ocean and then put it in its orbit. Our understanding here is that the ocean, or the half of the universe, is filled with Garbhodak water, which let me take it in another way. So our understanding is during devastation, the whole of universe is filled with water, and when Lord placed the earth on the top of the water, when the water receded, did the orbit form itself? Do we get it? Does everybody try to understand what I'm trying to say? For example, if you place a ball which floats and place it on the water and remove the water from below, and hold the ball in some way on the top by a string or something like that. So the way I can understand is that, or this is my understanding, is that this is when the the creation happened, the earth could have been placed on the top of the ocean and the water cleared from below, so that the earth kind of went back to its orbit, or the earth was put back into the orbit. There are two logical explanations, but I don't have the correct answer on how or who or when either took the earth back and placed it in its orbit. So I don't have an 100% answer. We can definitely research on that. Yes.
Prabhu, just if you don't mind, I want to read the purport, the 46th purport.
Okay.
The earth was placed on the water by his inconceivable potency. The Lord is all powerful, and therefore he can sustain the huge planets either on the water or in the air as he likes. The tiny human brain cannot conceive how these potencies of the Lord can act. Man can give some vague explanation of the laws by which such phenomena are made possible, but actually the tiny human brain is unable to conceive of the activities of the Lord, which are therefore called inconceivable. Yet the frog philosophers still try to give some imaginary explanation. Prabhupada is talking about that. I don't know, is it relevant to what you are trying to mention?
No, it's perfectly relevant. No, it's perfectly relevant. It answers the question whether just placing on the ocean itself is enough for it to be placed in the orbit, and the Lord is sustaining. Wonderful. That's a wonderful answer. Thank you so much for bringing that up.
Thank you.
Prabhu, I had a question. So this, the devastation happened in the previous night, and this incident is happening in the daytime, right?
Right.
So, and earlier we read that Brahma swallowed the water and the wind and all that.
Right.
So, at this point, when this boar incarnation came, the devastation wasn't there, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. That again, you're right. When I was giving that logical when I was trying to give the explanation, I refuted myself mentally by using the same argument which you put forth, that it could not have been possible that Lord Brahma had already sucked, or he had sucked up the water from the material world.
Prabhuji, I have a quick question.
Sorry, Mataji. I mean, in this same question, the purport that Vedavit Prabhu read, that explains the potency of the Lord, whether he can float in the air, float in the water, or keep it in the sky. But Prabhu, that doesn't explain placing it in the water is equal to placing it in the orbit, correct, Prabhu?
No, that's what Vedavit
So that purport was explaining that you cannot question the Lord's potency, right?
Right. So he can maintain. We don't know for sure if we are on the ocean right now or in the orbit. That's what I'm trying to say. Lord can keep the planet afloat the ocean and maintain it, just like, or he can place it in the air or water, and he can maintain it either ways.
So you are saying we cannot distinguish it.
At least we cannot conceive of it. How he can. That's my another point. So another point which struck me was, if Ganga is flowing through all the universal planetary systems, why don't we see Ganga falling from sky? It's a simple thing. I always thought, when Lord as Vamandev, he pierced the covering of the universe, and from his toe the Ganges started flowing down. Why do we see that the outer space is completely vacuum and there is no way or there is no scope of anything to come from anywhere? But Ganga is flowing all over the universe, from upper planetary systems, the middle planetary systems, to the lower planetary systems. She is flowing through the entire planetary systems.
Okay.
So
you're saying that we cannot conceive whether it's on water or whether it is in orbit or not in orbit.
Till we get a bona fide acharya who clarifies it.
Okay.
Your answer question remains, but I don't have an answer. The only thing I can bring up is 4th canto, 17th chapter, 34th word. There is another reference to Varaha, where the earth says praise to the Lord, saying that this is saying that you put me back into the orbit after I was. I just read that particular verse. This is from 4:17:34. My dear Lord, you are always unborn. Once in the form of the original boar, you rescued me from the waters in the bottom of the universe. Through your own energy, you created all the physical elements, the senses, the heart, and the mind, and for the maintenance of the world. Purport, Vaishnava Prabhupada, this refers to the time when Lord Krishna appeared as a supreme boar Varaha and rescued the earth, which had been merged in the water. The Asura Hiranyaksha had dislocated the earth from its orbit and thrown it beneath the waters of the Garbhodak ocean. The Lord, in the shape of the original boar, rescued the earth. So while your question remains, there is no answer. I'll try to do any more research to see if we can come up with some definitive answer. But otherwise, we just say at this point we cannot. We just keep it as a question and pray to Krishna to give us answers. I think Bhagavatam.
Okay.
The premise of Bhagavatam is that there are questions, and more questions. So while we hope to get answers, I'm pretty sure we get more questions of our own too. So.
Prabhuji, I just I was thinking about the video that Govincharan Prabhu sent quite some time ago on about Sadhguru Prabhu's, and
right.
in the video, if you see, it does look like the earth, is in water. And I was also thinking about the thing that we were discussing last time, Jambudvipa Bharatavarsha.
Right.
Dvipa means island, right?
Right.
So
right.
then this question appears whether we are in the orbit or not.
Yeah, you're right. And the other thing is, in the 5th, actually my request to the Vaishnavas is, I'm going to start writing all these questions on planetary systems. Most of them, that will be either you will be more clear when we read the 5th canto, or even more confused, but either ways they will shed more light in terms of the planetary systems and their orbits and how they move. 5th canto is very, very descriptive about the planetary systems. And actually, it is said how even the islands, Srila Prabhupada writes in the 5th canto that in the 1st chapter, how Maharaj Priyavrat took his horse, took his chariot, and he went all over the planetary systems. And when his horse cut the planetary systems, then the islands were formed. So Srila Prabhupada writes, an island can mean a planet in the space, or it can actually mean a mass of land on the water, on the earth, with water surrounding it. So yeah, we can do more research work. I'll try to see if I can get some better answer, or whether acharyas have explained it or clarified it. But if not, we accept it. We just say, okay, the Lord placed it on the ocean, and that's what we know. We accept and we pray to the Lord.
Prabhu, and I had one more thing I was thinking about is all the planets that are below Earth's planet, it's considered that they don't get sunlight. So in that sense, when we are talking, does it mean all the middle planetary system are actually on the ocean and all the others are in the ocean so that they cannot actually, so that the sun cannot?
Yeah, that's possible, yeah. Govincharan Prabhu sent something.
I was just, no, it's not related to Mataji's point. I was just wanted to share that it's a wonderful realization of how distribution of books is actually distributing Lord Varahadev, because Srila Prabhupada's books uplifts the earth.
Oh,
nice.
The consciousness.
Nice.
Nice for Sankirtan devotees at ISV.
Nice. Wonderful. Yes, so Sukeshwar, you are in the middle of some point.
No, Prabhu. I was just thinking about that point, that there is no sunlight below our earthly planets, right? So,
Right.
So I was thinking that does that mean they are actually in the Garbhodaka ocean, all those other planets, because they don't get the sunlight, and we are on the ocean, and there are planetary systems above us.
I could be. That's a reasonable explanation based on our understanding, and then which can be clarified better as we read the 5th canto.
Prabhu, thank you.
Prabhu, I had one question.
Yes, Mother.
In the purport to verse 31, here Prabhupada says that this particular appearance of the boar incarnation actually took place in the Swayambhuva devastation, when all planets other than the higher ones, Jana, Mahar and Satya, merged in the water of devastation. My understanding was that the earth planet is created only once a day of Brahma, and it doesn't get devastated during the small devastation that happens during the day of Brahma. But here it looks like it says that all planets other than the higher planets are merged.
So I was reading somewhere, I was looking up. So during the night time of Brahma, all the planets are submerged into the ocean, into the Garbhodaka ocean, and they lay at rest there. Where is it? Okay, so at least here is the good news. We can pull up 321.
321. Okay.
Prabhuji, you said you had a hard stop. Please feel free.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. Another 3 more minutes. Another 2 more minutes. I'll do that. So at least we have the first clue here, the breakthrough.
Which one, Prabhu? 321? Is it chapter 3, text 21?
No. 3rd canto, 20 chapter, 1st verse.
Which 3rd canto?
20 chapter, 1st verse. I'm sorry, I should have been more clear.
Oh, 320 and 1. Okay. So here it says, this is answering the earlier question that the Earth was situated in the orbit.
The Earth was again situated in the orbit. So, at least we get the clue that the Earth was kind of taken from the ocean and then it was situated back into its orbit. Now, whether Brahma did that or whether over a period of time it happened, again, it's not very clear. So, anyway, this is the first clue. And the second clue is if we can search Vedabase on the orbit, then we can find that at the end of Brahma's night, then all the planets are situated in the bottom of the ocean, and the Lord again puts them back into the orbit, I guess, after the planetary systems are created. So I think that's my understanding here. Wow, this is an amazing group to read. When we when we read with our group, we had questions but not as many. So it's good. Thank you so much for making my understanding more deeper.
Thank you, Prabhu, for giving us all a chance to read Bhagavatam. Especially third canto, I never thought I would read all this.
Yeah, Varaha. Anyways, I'll see if I can get better answer for the Earth orbit, and then to your question, Mataji, that at the end of Brahma's day, then all the planets are situated in the bottom of the ocean, and I think the Lord picks them up from the bottom and again places on the top. Then Hiranyaksha, he dislocated the Earth from the orbit, put it back, and the Lord had to come and pick up the Earth back from that place, place it on the top of the ocean, and it was placed back into its orbit. So that's all we can understand.
So it was like dislocated and this merged in the water, but not like recreated or what?
No.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much.
I think it's 8:30.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Vacha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyevacha
पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। हरे कृष्ण वृंद की जय।